So let's dive into something, a really deep, kind of paradoxical question for our time. What's the real relationship between the absolute peak of artificial intelligence and, the deepest parts of spiritual knowledge? It's a fascinating collision between perfect articulation on one hand and profound personal transformation on the other. Let's just put this right out there at the start, because it's the really unsettling thought that's driving this whole discussion. What if the very thing we're all looking for, that flawless, totally complete understanding, what if that could become the biggest trap, the biggest obstacle on our path? Okay, so if you've ever tried to dive into the metaphysical world of a thinker like Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, you know the feeling, right? It's this huge, incredibly intricate system of thought that can feel, well, almost impossible to get into. The intellectual challenge is just immense. You run into a concept like tajallī, divine self-disclosure, and you realize pretty quickly you're dealing with something that's happening on, multiple levels of reality all at once. Trying to wrap your head around how this one single divine essence becomes this vast, diverse world we see, that can take years, even a lifetime of study. But what if you had a tool, a new kind of guide that promised you perfect clarity right now? So let's build this thing in our minds, right? Imagine an AI. It's been trained on the entire Akbarian library, the Futuhat, the Fusus, and not just that, but all the great commentators who systematized his work, like Qūnawī and Qayṣarī. Its programming is strict. It uses the classical definitions for every single term, and it is absolutely forbidden from bringing in any outside information. It is, for all intents and purposes, the perfect formalist scholar. So here's the really crucial part. This AI can give you a perfect map, a flawless one. It can define every single technical term, trace every complex argument, and lay out the entire system with a coherence that a human scholar might spend their whole life striving for. Now, if you're a student who's struggling with this stuff, the appeal of that is, well, it's almost impossible to resist. But here's where the whole thing takes a really sharp turn. Because for all the appeal of this perfect map, the most powerful critique of this kind of formalism doesn't come from a modern skeptic. It comes from deep inside the tradition itself. It comes from Ibn Arabi, who built his entire way of knowing on a really critical distinction. And that distinction hinges on this one crucial concept: doc, or direct tasting. You see, for the mystic, true knowledge, ma'rifa, isn't about knowing about something. It's about directly experiencing it. It's a kind of knowledge that gets unveiled to you, a gift, not something you can just build up piece by piece with your rational mind. And this is where that knowledge lands. You see, Ibn Arabi comes back to this verse again and again because it completely shifts where we think perception happens. It moves it away from our physical eyes and even from our thinking mind to a totally different faculty. And that faculty, it's the qalb, the heart. But we have to be super clear here. In Sufi thought, this is not the heart as the seat of our emotions. No, it's a transcendent organ of perception. The whole point of the spiritual path is to polish this heart until it becomes like a perfectly clean mirror, one that can receive the divine light, the nur, and reflect truths that our rational intellect just can't get to on its own. Okay, so what this does is it sets up two fundamentally different ways of seeing, two totally different ways of approaching reality itself. This comparison is it's absolutely key. On one side, you have the man of reason, and this is our AI perfectly. He looks at the world, at creation, as the primary thing and tries to figure out the truth that's behind it. For him, truth is a concept he sees reflected in the world. But the man of insight, the mystic, does a complete 180. Through that polished mirror of the heart, he sees the divine truth as the primary external reality, and all of creation is just an internal reflection within that truth. It's a total flip of perspective, a move from the intellect, the aql, to the heart, the qalb. Which brings us right back to the central problem. How on earth could this perfect tool, this ultimate man of reason, actually become a barrier? How could it get in the way? The key concept we need here is hijāb, a veil. But look, in this way of thinking, the most dangerous veils aren't made of ignorance, not at all. The thickest, most impenetrable veils are often woven from knowledge itself, from a conceptual understanding that's so satisfying, so complete, that it actually blocks you from seeing the reality it's supposed to be describing. So how does this happen? How does this perfect veil get made? Well, it plays out in a few steps. It starts with a sincere student who wants to understand. The AI gives them a flawless articulation, that perfect map of reality.
The student is so impressed with this clarity that they mistake the map for the actual territory. They get this feeling of intellectual mastery. And here's the critical step. That difficult, arduous inner journey, it suddenly seems unnecessary. Why would you struggle to polish your own heart when your intellect has just been handed all the answers? The intellect itself becomes the veil, the hijab.
And that is the part that gets completely short-circuited. The sulūk. This is the active inward journey. It's the path of practice, of purifying the heart, of that inner struggle you have to go through to actually prepare yourself to receive a divine unveiling, a kashf. It's a process of transformation, not just an exercise in gathering information. So here's the bottom line. The AI is the ultimate man of reason, perfect. But it has no qalb to polish. It can't go on the sulūk, and because of that, it can never, ever arrive at dhawq. It can describe the taste of honey in the most exquisite, perfect detail, but it can never actually taste it. And this leaves us, as modern seekers, with a really profound and, frankly, a very difficult question about the tools we're using to find our own way to understanding. And I want to be crystal clear about what the risk is here. The danger is not that the AI is wrong. In our scenario, its information is perfectly correct, perfectly sourced, flawlessly coherent. No, the danger is that this very perfection creates a powerful, seductive illusion that you've already arrived. The system it lays out is so intellectually satisfying that the mind just stops asking questions. It's content. And in that contentment, that deeper, harder call of the path, the call to actually transform the knower, not just collect more knowledge, that call just goes completely unheard. And that leaves us with this final question, really a question for our time. As our technology gets better and better at mastering the formal language of sacred traditions, we really have to ask ourselves, is it bringing us closer to the reality that language points to? Or is it just helping us build a more sophisticated, more beautiful, and in the end, a more inescapable illusion? That's the real challenge.